ACM, honored students, staff, and guests. It is great to be here today on Coast Salish territory. We acknowledge the Coast Salish territory and the peoples from this land. Esquimalt, Songhees Nations, Beecher Bay, Scia'new Nation, Scia'new Nation, and our Nuu-chah-nulch Pacheedaht Nation. The Sooke School District works alongside these nations as you, our students, are from these territories. We gather today for the Remembrance of Day 2020. This year is a little bit different than usual as we are meeting virtually. I wish I could see you face to face, but thankfully, we still can remember this important day together. In World War I, World War II, there were many Aboriginal people that fought alongside with Canadian troops. The Aboriginal people, Inuit, Métis, and First Nations, participated in all theaters of the war, from snipers to code breakers to nurses to rangers. They served proudly in order to preserve our treaties with the British. First Nations continue to contribute in many theaters now today. My uncles enlisted in the armed forces during World War II. Because they enlisted, they lost their status. Fought with Indian Affairs for 10 to 15 years before they could get their status back. It is quite a thing that we were denied benefits even though they were war veterans. My dad was a ranger. He used to patrol the waters out here on the coast. So we have a long history of participation in world conflicts. Today I recognize everyone that contributed to keep our families safe. Even those who stayed home, such as many women who worked in manufacturing plants and supported the war efforts. It's important to reflect with each other on our shared history. Lest we forget, Hajka, Glako, Masi, Hawa.
Thank you, Elder Chips. Welcome to the virtual Belmont Remembrance Day Assembly. Today we acknowledge the sacrifices made in war by Canadian soldiers and soldiers from around the world fighting for freedom and the challenges peacekeepers face every day. Before we start, I would like to remind us that this is a formal event. Even though we are in our classrooms, we ask that you take the time today to reflect on what Remembrance Day means to you. We will now have our student MCs lead our virtual assembly.
The freedoms that we enjoy today exist because a generation of Canadians, just as the generations before them, answered the call to defeat tyranny. And today, again, a new generation doing the same. Canadian Armed Forces members are deployed in ships at sea, advising combatants in war-torn countries and providing air support and patrols around the world. The 11th day of the 11th month, this is Remembrance Day in Canada. We normally would gather at cenotaphs and memorials in more than 6,200 municipalities, cities, towns, and villages throughout our country. This year, there are several virtual Remembrance Day ceremonies that will allow us to take a personal moment on November 11th to honor the many Canadian service personnel who have died in combat and in missions throughout the world. We will now have O Canada performed by the Royal Canadian Artillery Band in Edmonton, Alberta.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command, car ton bras sait porter l'épée, il sait porter la croix.
Canadians remember those who paid this supreme sacrifice in many ways, but what would Remembrance Day mean to you today? Perhaps the most important thing to remember is that many of those who were killed were not much older than all of us here at Belmont. In fact, some of them were the same age as us, even though the minimum age of enlistment was 18 years old. Some of these men and women left high school and university classes to fly warplanes while still in their teens. Others stormed the beaches of Sicily and France or fought in the Battle of the Atlantic. Many of them didn't reach the age of 21 before they were killed in action, but their plans for the future were bright as ours. They left the excitement and promise of graduation, of sharing more good times at home with friends to serve our country. The war turned their world upside down. More than once in the last 100 years, generations of young Canadians were thrust into massive conflicts which threatened their way of life. Thousands volunteered to serve in Canada's military, becoming soldiers, sailors, and Air Force personnel. They knew going in that enlisting would probably put their lives at risk, but they went ahead anyways. The year 2021 marks the 100th anniversary of the Remembrance Poppy in Canada. Madame Anna Guerin, later christened the Poppy Lady from France, inspired John McCrae's In Flanders Fields had an idea to adopt the distribution of the poppy on Armistice Day as a way to raise money for veterans' needs and to remember those who had given their lives during the First World War. In July of 1921, the Great War Veterans Association, which in 1925 would unify with other veteran groups to form the Canadian Legion, adopted the poppy as the flower of remembrance. Since then, the Legion and its members have upheld a tradition of remembrance.
While the last year marked the 57th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, within hours of Britain's declaration of war against Germany on September 3, 1939, a Nazi submarine torpedoed the ship SS Ethnia, a passenger liner bound for Montreal from London. Among the 112 victims are Canada's first casualties of the Second World War. The sinking sets the stage for the Battle of the Atlantic, a grueling 6-year struggle for the survival of Britain, the liberation of Europe, and to help to supply the Soviet Union. Canada and the colony in Newfoundland played a crucial role in protecting, operating, and supplying Allied convoys. Rapid expansion of Canada's Navy, Merchant Marine, and Air Force bolster this lifeline. Everything necessary for the war in Europe must arrive by ship. During the Second World War, more than 1 million Canadians, including 50,000 women, served in the military on the ground, at sea, or in the skies throughout the conflict. Millions more men, women, and children enthusiastically added their efforts on the home front. Canadians were also hailed as heroes by the Dutch for liberating the Netherlands from nearly 5 years of famine and Nazi oppression. The end of the Second World War culminated into two major events: Victory in Europe, or VE Day, on May 8, 1945, and Victory over Japan, or VJ Day, on August 15, 1945. As the war came to an end, Canada's military personnel in Asia began coming home, including more than 1,400 Canadians who had survived internment in Japanese prisoner of war camps since the disastrous Battle of Hong Kong in 1941. For Japanese Canadians who were targeted by racist government policies, the end of hostilities did not bring immediate relief. Nearly 4,000 would be deported to war-torn Japan, while thousands more faced the difficult task of rebuilding their lives, shattered after their relocation to internment camps and confiscation of their possessions. For many Canadians, both civilians and returning veterans, a new optimism emerges, but others face a long road to recovery and healing. The story of Indigenous service in the First and Second World Wars, the Korean War, and the later Canadian Armed Forces efforts is a proud one. While exact numbers are elusive, it has been estimated that as many as 12,000 First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people served in the great conflicts of the 20th century, while at least 500 of Indigenous Armed Forces members sadly losing their lives. This rich heritage has been recognized in many ways. The names given to several Royal Canadian Navy warships over the years, like HMS Iroquois, Cayagua, and Huron, are just one indication of our country's lasting respect for the contributions of Indigenous people. This long tradition of military service is also commemorated with a striking National Aboriginal Veterans Monument in Ottawa. Remembrance ceremonies are held at this special monument, including on Indigenous Veterans Day, which is observed each year on November 8th.
Today, most of us have been exposed to conflicts or reports of conflict. The war in Afghanistan and Canada's involvement there has come alive on our TV screens and throughout the internet. The results of warfare are easily seen, but what's most often missing in the storyline is how Canada has filled an important role there, providing security and helping with nation-building initiatives. It is also important to remember Canada's contributions in the former Yugoslavia, Rwanda, and Gulf War, and other conflicts around the world. Even under COVID-19 restrictions, the Canadian Armed Forces personnel are currently deployed in the Caribbean, Central Europe, Eastern Europe, Central Africa, and across Canada, supporting various operations. Remembrance Day is the time to honor those who served and those who paid the supreme sacrifice. It also gives us the important opportunity to reflect on how we could feel if our whole pattern of life was threatened. Would we have the courage to do what our parents, aunts, and uncles and grandparents did? This is why it is important to wear the poppy and to relate to those who left their homes, loved ones, and friends to fight for Canada, and to remember those who are serving today. But above all, we must remember those who did not return. Miss Dawson and the Belmont Concert Choir have recorded the Quaker hymn, "Come and Find the Quiet Center." The lyrics of the song reads, "Clear the chaos and the clutter, clear our eyes that we may see all the things that really matter, be at peace and simply be."
Thank you, Ms. Dawson and the Concert Choir. Next, we have an interview with Officer Cadets Jeffery, Corney, Navya, Pottumutu, and Tyson, Bouvier-Spence. All three are current members of the Canadian Armed Forces undergoing training at the Royal Military College in Kingston, Ontario, and all three are graduates of Belmont Secondary School.
Hello, I'm Officer Cadet Jeffery Corney from the Royal Military College of Canada in Kingston, Ontario. My family, I'm the fourth generation to serve in the Canadian Armed Forces. I was also a graduate from Belmont in 2019 and a member of the Belmont Music Department. I was also an Army Cadet for 7 years at 2483 Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry Royal Canadian Army Cadet Corps in Esquimalt, BC. Today, I'm here to talk to you about what Remembrance Day means to me. To me, Remembrance Day is about honoring the generations of Canadian Armed Forces members who have served during times of war, conflict, and peace in the past and the present. It's about honoring those who made the ultimate sacrifice of losing life and limb to protect and gain the rights, freedoms, and securities we now enjoy as Canadians. So, with that being said, I'd encourage everyone on November 11th at 11 o'clock to take a moment of silence to honor all military members who have served and those who are continuing to serve our great country.
Tyson Bouvier-Spence. I graduated Belmont in 2018, and now I'm enrolled in the CAF attending RMC in the Alloy program. And Alloy program is Aboriginal Leadership Opportunity Year. It's a year for Aboriginal students to get a taste of what the military is like and see if they're interested, as well as learn some leadership skills and get acquainted with military lifestyle and what RMC is like. And it also facilitates your entry into the ROTP. So that's what I'm up to.
Hi, my name is Navya Pottumutu. I'm a first year at RMC. My degree right now is aeronautical engineering, and my trade, so my job with the Canadian Armed Forces, will be aerospace controller.
Before I joined the CAF, I didn't know a whole lot about the history of Remembrance Day. I remember going to parades because my stepdad was in the military, my grandpa was in the military. As a kid, I remember we would all wear a poppy and we would read poems like In Flanders Field. But I didn't have the best understanding, but I still had respect for the soldiers who fought and protected and served our country. And yeah, as a kid, I didn't really realize how important of a holiday it is. And as I grow older, I'm learning more about it.
As a kid was also a day where we remembered our soldiers and their service to our country. Since I was with cadets, I did parades on Remembrance Day, and I went to assemblies at school where we talked about what they did and how it worked and everything to do with the military and all the people that serve our country. But even though I had the basic understanding, it didn't feel like I fully understood what was going on because I never had any family in the military. I wasn't really like part of the military since I wasn't serving yet. But all I knew that it was like an important holiday where we take time to understand and not quite relate, but to remember what these people have done for our country. For me, I think wearing the uniform and thinking about Remembrance Day, my respect has definitely grown from what it used to be because like even though I haven't served, I'm surrounded by people that have and that tell me like what it's like out there. And obviously there are people that are not here to share their experiences, right? And it's a big responsibility that's on our shoulders as we wear our uniforms and as we like go on to serve our country. So I think Remembrance Day will be one of the days of the year where I will be relating now to what's happening and to what it feels like to serve your country. Even though I haven't been deployed, it still feels like a day where you can kind of respect people around you a little bit more and understand what's going on.
After joining the forces, it feels a lot more real to the people I know now. Because when I was a kid, it was kind of like, we remember these old soldiers that fought a long time ago. But after joining RMC and meeting so many people in the forces and hearing their stories, I realized it's not just about that. It's about people now and in the past. And I've heard stories of what people have been through and what they've done for their country. And it gave me a new appreciation for what the day is about and for what the Canadian Armed Forces represents, especially. And yeah, it feels like I'm actually like a part of it now and helping to celebrate it. And I'm really thankful to have been here and talk to those people and get a new perspective.
Like joining the military isn't for everybody, and like, but being a part of this organization is like being a part of a big family, the support is there for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to encourage or discourage people from joining.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it. There's days where it's really hard, but one of the best parts is the camaraderie that you have with everyone you meet. Like the people in my squadron I'm so close with now. And yeah, there's hard days, but you grow so fast and you learn a lot here.
At the Royal Canadian Legion, one of their primary goals is fostering remembrance. Thanks to a long-standing tradition of the annual literary and poster contests, the youth of Canada have been able to help promote not only the National Remembrance Day service, but also the act of honoring our military heritage. When the Clouds Cry is a poem written by a student to Abby Dreyer in Shawnigan Lake. Abby's work was chosen as the winner of 2021 literary contest from the Royal Canadian Legion in BC and Yukon divisions. The sky is a collage of gray. The clouds are swollen and heavy, and the sun seems to have abandoned us all. It feels as if all the life has been stolen away. As I walk towards the crosses, a sensation of overwhelming sadness overcomes my carefully measured thoughts, which becomes a tide of unconsolable emotion that refuses to be contained, as if we could ever understand the magnitude of the 11th day, the 11th month, of the 11th hour. As if we could understand what it's like to go to war. The poppies seem to stare, their black hearts penetrating into our hearts, as if we could understand the true sacrifice, the true pain, the true endurance, and the true destruction. The truth is, we cannot. We live this day each year when we are told stories, something about sacrifice, words of pain, stories about endurance, pictures about destruction. But they aren't just stories, they are real. The sacrifice and pain and endurance and destruction, they are real. I wish it didn't have to be that way. Remembrance Day reminds us to relish the moments, to understand what gifts we have been given, stand silently in the name of sacrifice. It allows us to celebrate being free. So as I walk through the white crosses, the clouds begin to cry. I know their tears are for the soldiers and for peace. Now we will have a grade 9 student, Bryn P, sound the last post, which will be followed by 2 minutes of silence. The Lament on bagpipes, so will sound the Rouse.
Thank you for joining us today in remembering our fallen sailors, soldiers, and aircrew. Please take the time on November 11th to have your own personal reflection.